Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley Nathan, the Marketing Director at G12 Communications. We have a lot to cover today, so we're going to jump right into the webinar. We'll just go to the next slide. So thank you for joining. I know this is a busy time of year and everyone has a lot on the go, but today we're going to cover how to make Microsoft Teams your all-in-one business phone system. Go to the next slide. So on the agenda, we're going to really quickly go over who G12 is. We're going to talk about the Teams misconceptions, Teams for seamless deployment, some of the top Teams features, and some of the things you should consider if you're going to deploy Teams as your business phone system. From there, we're going to hand it over to Dan, who's going to do a TCAP tour, and then we'll hand it back over to Brandon Bradley, who will do the Teams tour. And then finally, Rick Garcia will talk about tips to deploy and some of the next steps you should be considering for the new year. So meet our speakers. On the phone today, we have Rick Garcia, who is our CRO and co-founder at G12 Communications. We have Brandon Bradley, who is our CTO. And all the way from Australia, we have Dan Pearson, who is the CEO of Pingco. So with that, I will hand it over to Rick Garcia.
Thanks, Ashley. Appreciate it. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us during this lunch hour to walk through how Teams can be your all-in-one phone system. Some high-level information about G12 Communications. We started in 2011, and I'd like to give a little bit of history about G12 and how we started and where we come from, because it's significant when it comes to voice networks. So we were part of a company called 360 Networks, which ultimately built a 36-state CLEC with fiber infrastructure and switching infrastructure into the wholesale market. And ultimately, we sold services to the likes of the 8x8s and Vonages and Rings and Google Voice, J2 Global, who's eFax. Those are the customers that we served at a wholesale level. When that company sold in 2011 to Zayo, a couple of weeks later, we spun out and started G12 Communications with some of the leadership from 360 Networks. So you've got a really experienced management team in the voice infrastructure business, and we've got a comprehensive portfolio of services that we deliver, from SIP trunking to UCaaS, direct routing, and obviously now Operator Connect. And so just kind of a history of the evolution. We like to call it our path to Teams, really. And it's, again, because we can provide a portfolio of services that helps transition you to a full Microsoft Teams environment. Next slide, please. Some of the customers we support, and we'll put some verticals here. The healthcare vertical, lots and lots of customers, I think, in the healthcare space on the call today. The government space, financial institutions, and then enterprises across the country we support. So those are the verticals that we typically support with our Microsoft Teams deployments. Next slide. Just to kind of give everyone some perspective on where Teams is at from a deployment perspective. There's 270 million active users right now of Microsoft Teams. And why that's significant is when you look at the overall market of 400 million seats available for voice services, you've got quite an audience in 270 million of them, right? And you've got 15 million PSTN users today on Microsoft Teams Voice. And again, I'll kind of go through the licensing that's out right now. Microsoft has an E5 license. Obviously, you guys are probably all aware, and the E5 license includes the phone system component. And so when you look at the number of E5 licenses out there, which sits at around 41 or 42 million subscribers, and you've got 15 million PSTN users, there's a lot of organizations, and maybe some of you on the phone today or on the call today, that are using Microsoft E5 license, but don't take advantage of the phone system. So I really wanted to share with you how popular Microsoft Voice is becoming. 60% of the Fortune 500 companies have chosen Microsoft Teams as their platform. Next slide, please. Just a brief slide for licensing. And what this basically shows is that if you've got a Microsoft O365 license or an enterprise E1, E3 license, you'll want to add the phone system component to your solution, right? The phone system component does give you the icon on the left-hand side of your phone. It does open up the actual phone system within Microsoft Teams. If you've got the boxes down below, the lower boxes, the E5, A5, G5, or comparable license down there, the phone system piece is included. So if you're in that space now and you've got an E5 license, you're paying for that, you have a phone system built into your Microsoft Teams environment. So it really just takes a dial tone provider like G12 Communications to turn that on for you. So some common misconceptions, and we hear this a lot because we work with a lot of customers. And so some of the things that people bring to us as reasons why they're not putting their voice entirely on Microsoft Teams is they think other providers are easier to deploy. And that's not the case with the Microsoft Teams deployment. The benefit here is that you can concurrently run solutions together in IPPBX along with Microsoft Teams and create a transition. And we're going to talk about what that transition looks like a little bit later in the call. We hear this pretty often. Teams isn't a real phone system. That's a bit comical actually, because if you look at the Gartner Magic Quadrant report that came out, Teams has surpassed all UCaaS providers that have been in the space, right? So of the 400 million seats available, Teams has captured more than the combined, or just about more than the combined UCaaS providers out there. So Teams is certainly a contender in the phone space these days. Initial deployment takes a lot of time. It can, if you're working with an organization that is not used to deploying voice services. When you work with an organization like G12 and all we've done is deploy voice services, that is our wheelhouse, that's what we've done. Deployment doesn't take a lot of time because we understand the steps and data collection that are required to deploy a complex solution for you and make it really easy. Some more of these things that we see. Teams can't connect to devices in my organization. Oh, this is a good one. This is the one where we hear about overhead pagers or door actuators or intercoms, those sorts of things. Those sorts of devices can now connect into Microsoft Teams. As a former UCaaS or as a UCaaS provider, we do integrate several different analog devices, but now even Microsoft Teams recently has integrated analog devices into the Microsoft Teams solution so that now devices can be deployed to do door actuators and overhead paging. So analog devices can be connected to your organization's facilities. Teams doesn't have all the required features. We're going to show you a demonstration a little later, which is why we're actually in Zoom and not Microsoft Teams. I know it's cringe that we're sitting in Zoom versus Microsoft Teams and we're talking about how Teams should be your all-in-one, and it absolutely should. But we wanted to show you calls actually working, and in order to do that, we need to show you from a third-party view. So Teams does have quite a few features we're going to go over that are phone system component features. Well, you hear this more. Oftentimes you hear this is from legacy telecom people, and I'm one of them. I've been in this space for 24 years, so I'm a legacy telephone person. And when Teams first came out, I was the one saying, Teams can't do this and Teams can't do that. I didn't know it at the time. And now, looking back, I look at this and go, the features in Microsoft Teams are unbelievable. So Teams isn't reliable enough to be my business phone system. Again, that is not the case. With the effort and money and research and development that Microsoft Teams, I think I saw a slide or heard of a slide that was out there showing 450 different updates in 2022 for Teams phone across the this year. And what that means is that Teams and Microsoft are putting so much effort into making Teams the most feature-rich phone system that's reliable in the business space. And the SLA sits at 99.99. An interesting fact, I think the last 6 months Teams has been up 100% of the time versus some of the competitors out there sitting at 93 and 96% respectively. All right. So let's talk about 9 tips to ensure a seamless phone deployment. This is one where we have a lot of experience in kind of the deployment of phone systems. And so working through some of these things is something to take into account. So all the elements that make up your existing phone system. And for those of you that deal with phone systems today, I know we've got a lot of CIOs and CEOs on the call, and everyone, from a leadership perspective says, hey, let's just roll into Teams. And then you get down to your guys that are managing the phone system, and the guys that are managing the phone system say, wait a minute, we've got, this connected to it, that connected to it. So understanding what's actually connected to the phone system, right? If there's applications connected to it, if there's integrations connected to it, if there's devices connected to it, right? What are your users using? So all the understanding what is connected to your phone system entirely is important. So plan, well, you decide how you're going to mirror your workflow and call flow first. So initially, when we work with organizations, we work to mirror exactly what they have, right? That's kind of the easiest thing to do so that it doesn't change too much. But then what we do is, because we're the experts in this space, we can sit here and work with you in your organization on how you can better use tools within Microsoft Teams that allow for efficiencies in your business process. Because ultimately, what Teams does is create an amazing user experience, not just for your end users, but for your customers as well. What other things you should consider is mapping out your device strategy. With Teams, you may just want to move to an entire soft phone environment. If you're a heavy facility organization, you may not. So understanding what your device strategy looks like. That means rooms, that means devices, physical devices, phones, and/or headsets. So understanding what that device strategy looks like, that's something to take into account. Next slide. The network, how the network stacks up. For the most part, everyone that's on this call is probably running a legacy PBX. And what I mean by that is a Cisco, a Mitel, a ShoreTel, an NEC, an Avaya platform. And so the likelihood is that you've been running IP voice now for a long time, at least within your network, right? And then maybe it gets to your PBX and you've got, maybe it's SIP coming out of your PBX, maybe it's not SIP coming out of your PBX, but you've been running IP for quite some time, I'm sure. But evaluating the network is still important, understanding what each location looks like. Certainly utilize the Microsoft Teams Network Planner so you can organize your locations within Microsoft Teams in the admin center. You can build your sites out, build your locations out, and Microsoft Teams will tell you what's the optimal network capacity needed for what you're running there. Simplifying your dial plan. This is technical stuff here, right? Simplifying the dial plan, but everyone's, if you're on a legacy system, you're used to extensions, right? Running your system. So your extension is, 100, 300, whatever your extension is, 5,000. Well, Microsoft Teams runs on 10-digit dialing, right? They run on DID. So the DID or the phone numbers are embedded in the users. And that is that's why it helps simplifying your dial plan. Where this comes into play is if you have multiple locations, right, that may have duplicate extensions. So something to look for there. Don't complicate things. Well, as difficult as voice may be, it's not as heavy as you think, particularly the complexity in migrating. And again, it's the reason I say this is because when we migrate services, we run things and can run things concurrently with your organization with existing systems, right? And that makes for the easiest transition that you could ever expect. So that's something there. Compliance, understanding the 911 regulatory environment, obviously making sure that we're RABOM compliant for your organization. And then establish a user adoption strategy before you migrate. And so that is, what does training look like? Is everyone using Teams today? Is everyone going to be new to Teams? And so you've got to train for all of Teams utilization. But for the most part, what makes Teams so exciting is that you're using it already. Your organization is using it already. And the adoption of the phone system is much easier than by replacing it with another application that you want to sit on your PC, right? So the same application, consolidating your tech stack makes for a really simple end user migration. Okay, next slide. Some features. This is the fun part. Exploring the Microsoft Teams features. This goes back to that that myth that Teams doesn't have the features that that other phone systems have. Well, here we go. We've got auto attendance, obviously, in Teams that are voice enabled. CRM integration and screen pops. So and that's just built in. Call recording is built in. Real-time transcription. And that's the real-time transcription is amazing. Watching it work, we'll show you that a little later in the call. You've got usage reports. There's the network testing. There's the call quality dashboards. End-to-end encryption as an organization that's HIPAA compliant to G12 Communications. I'm sure for the healthcare organizations or banking institutions that are on this call today, end-to-end encryption is important for you. And then obviously emergency calling. And then you get down to your basic call stuff like call groups and call hold, call park, and call queues, but more recently, voice-enabled channels. That's pretty exciting. You can use those in place of call groups or call queues. You've got some end user things like simultaneous ring. You can even simultaneously ring external numbers, music on hold for PSTN calls, and then network and location information there. And then obviously the webinar events, which again, it's a bit stingy to be on a Zoom call right now talking about Microsoft Teams, but the webinar stuff is included there as well. Why Teams and Operator Connect? All right, this is where it gets really exciting. So previously, if you were deploying voice services for Teams, you were deploying an audio codes M1K sitting next to your Avaya, sitting next to your Cisco. You're using dial tone that you're already paying for in that infrastructure, and you're doing direct routing into Microsoft Teams. In an Operator Connect environment, G12 runs the infrastructure. We have the infrastructure that's directly built to Microsoft Teams. And what that does is it's faster and easier deployments. And we mean faster and easier. We're going to show you a little later what that looks like, because faster is in 10 minutes, you've got dial tone connected to your system. It's pretty amazing to watch. Enhanced support and reliability, absolutely. We understand what that looks like because that infrastructure is our infrastructure and we're tying it to your tenant. So from a support and reliability perspective, it's there. Affordability, when you consider the things that you spend money on as an organization, and when I say you spend money on, obviously there's the telco, a dollar to dollar comparison, apples to apples comparison cost. Then you've got the maintenance and licensing that you're using for, to support any disparate legacy systems. And then you've got any support requirements, whether that's workforce or outsourced teams that are helping support that infrastructure. So when you add up all the costs, the affordability is pretty impressive, and it is because we're eliminating a lot of those components when you consolidate that tech stack, right, and move your voice services and Teams. Seamless migration, we're going to talk about what that looks like in a moment, and then obviously the easy adoption. So that's why you choose Operator Connect, an Operator Connect provider like G12 and Microsoft Teams to be your phone system. Technical insights. Brandon, I'm going to toss this one over to you, Brandon, because you're the CTO and I'm not.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. So from a network perspective, this is a high level example of how we interconnect our infrastructure, our data centers into Microsoft. And there's a couple of reasons we do this. One is for resiliency, disaster recovery, failover, but the other added benefit is we can tie on to Microsoft's SLA of 99.99, and we can extend that into our infrastructure. So now we can offer, from a PSTN perspective, we can offer that same SLA that Microsoft Teams is offering you from a client perspective. So again, this is just showing that we have dual interconnects into all of our data centers, into diverse locations within Microsoft to bring that SLA into our footprint as well. And then this last piece is just showing how we leverage those interconnects to secure the signaling channel, the media channel, and delivering that encrypted end-to-end call flow. I say end-to-end to our data centers. Obviously, we can't control what the mobile networks are doing out there, but we encrypt it to the best of our ability to bring that HIPAA compliance and security compliance to our customer base.
Good.
And
yeah, there you go. Well, I was going to say it all starts here in the G12 in the Teams admin panel, but we're going to skip that because we've got Dan from TCAP is going to give us a full-on tour of TCAP. Now, let me explain the integration between G12 and TCAP. TCAP is a software platform that we utilize to take our telco infrastructure and connect it into Microsoft Teams so that we've got this real smooth onboarding process. And Dan, why don't you take us through what that onboarding process looks like?
Absolutely. Thanks, Rick, and hello to everybody on the call. And as Rick said, I'm from sunny Melbourne today. It's not sunny, so thank you very much for your time. I'm going to share my screen now, and we're going to start exactly where Rick had us finish off on the slide deck there. on the Microsoft Teams Admin Center. So here we have an organization we have literally just created. It's Contoso Electronics, and it's a brand new Microsoft tenancy. So for those of you on the call who understand what you've got set up with your Microsoft environments, you guys can actually follow along. And if you want to jump into your Teams Admin Center, you can have Teams voice activated just as quick as we are on the call today. For those of you who don't have access to this, your IT guys will. So tell them to head over there and follow through as well. And there'll be some instructions after the call on how to do this if you guys want to follow through. So it all begins through the voice tab. So this is the Teams Admin Center. It begins on the voice tab, and we come over here and click on the Operator Connect tile. We jump into our all operators on the list here, and then we're basically grabbing this G12 logo. So we click on G12 as our provider. And I can tell you now, G12 are one of the only carriers in that entire list of carriers that can enable that self-service telephone activation, and you can be live with dial tone as quickly as we are here on the webinar today. When you get to the consent screen here, you'll see you've got a few options around calling. So we'll say we're US, and Contoso Electronics, we've got about 24 staff in this tenancy organization, and we're going to jump over in here and put our details in here. We'll accept the Microsoft T's and C's, and then we add G12 as the operator. And what this is doing is it's granting consent for G12 to be able to provide the dial tone, for G12 to be able to use the infrastructure that Brandon has already spoken about to push that dial tone. And this means that you don't need to go and invest in physical tin, in data center space, in any other subscriptions. It's one click of a button to be able to grant that capability. When you click grant consent or add as an operator, it will take us across to the G12 website, and we're effectively now registering for the G12 portal and platform to be able to go live. So you start your free trial, you'll be given an approval code, and we'll call this Contoso G12 Electronics. You guys get to see me type some details in here. I've done a few of these, so I'm going to use that address there. Super secret password. And we'll accept the T's and C's. We're not a robot. And register. So that's told me I've got an activation email sent. So we'll go ahead and I'll grab that out of my Gmail account. And you'll see we're being registered. So we'll go ahead and activate the account. That activation process takes just a couple of seconds, and we're now ready to begin setting everything up. So you'll see that there's no credit cards, there's no lengthy approval process required. There's no forms to fill in. Those of you who used to dealing with traditional telcos, you've got to scan and sign forms and get all that sent back. This is all a really, really simple process for us to go live. Security is absolutely paramount. We're enabling this level of automation. We want to make sure that that we've got it completely secured. So here we go. We're going to set up my multi-factor authentication. And we're enabled. So we get presented with our services dashboard, and it's from here that you can configure a whole myriad of services. You can set up Operator Connect, which is obviously what we're doing today. You can set up SIP trunking services. You can set up direct routing services. You can control your telephone numbers, and we'll go through that now and show you how it all works. So from the main screen here, we'll add a new service. We'll add Operator Connect. This will push us across to a Microsoft page to basically say, hey, look, we just want to make sure that this is the right tenancy. Again, security is utmost importance. So we're going to associate now the Microsoft tenancy with the G12 platform. So we accept that process. The permission's granted on behalf of my organization. And after a few short seconds, it will take us back to the G12 portal with the consent granted. And it's that's as simple as it is to set up Operator Connect. We're healthy, we're live, we're enabled. I know Rick said we can do it in 10 minutes. That was about 4. What we want to do now is add some telephone numbers. So you can port your existing numbers. You can use some of the numbers that we've got available on the platform. So those in the telephone numbers section here is where you'd bring your existing numbers. You can fill in all the details here, and that'll load the porting authority. Or for a trial purpose, we've loaded a whole bunch of trial blocks in here. So you'll see that you get to pick from any of the trial numbers. They might not be from your specific region or county, but these are just trial numbers. If you want something specific, you can request a new block. However, these available ones are really useful for the purposes of a trial. So Rick, why don't you tell us which one you want me to pick here? We'll make this somewhat interactive. Which one would you like?
Oh boy, the 90, is it 0040? Like the 0040.
004, sorry, that's a nice number. Let's go with that one. So we'll hit the grab button and request block. That will now automatically associate this entire number block to this tenancy. So you'll see in here, it's provisioning that, it's pushing that into the Microsoft Teams admin center, and we now have telephone numbers coming in and live, which is pretty cool. The next thing we're going to have a really quick look at here is our services screen will tell us a few things. It'll tell us the last time we had a health check. So this is automatically checking the platform every 4 hours and making sure that configuration state is correct. If your admins have accidentally changed something or they've broken something in the team side, G12's platform will automatically fix it. It'll detect that change, it'll repair it, and you'll get that nice, easy service status here on the main screen. You'll see all of your call stats. So call stats will populate in here. We'll see all of our outbound, inbound calls. You can group them. You can look at the call durations. You can see all those metrics populate in here as we start to make telephone calls. You can go ahead and set up additional admins in here. So you might want other people in your organization to manage Teams and telephony. A really powerful thing is you might not want them to have access to all of your Microsoft environment. You might have your telephony guys and your email guys separated within your environment. So this will allow you to set up users to specifically manage the voice aspects of your company, and you can control and change permission sets as you see fit. Your user screen will synchronize with all the users from the tenancy, and we'll come back here in just a moment and see some user accounts. But the thing that most customers want to do once they've allocated some telephone numbers is they want to go ahead and build all those call queues and IVRs and menu prompts. Now, you can do that from the Microsoft Teams Admin Center, and there's lots of documentation on how to do it. But we find that a lot of customers really want to have that sort of curated experience through G12 and want us to be helping you set up all of those call queues and accounts. So we've built a very basic builder, which effectively will allow the call to route in via an auto attendant, different messages. And this gives us a very basic sort of baseline call queue. So we can go ahead and create a main auto attendant, and we can call this Contoso Electronics is the company we're from. We'll put ourselves into Pacific and we'll speak English Australia. Is that all right? No, we'll go US. Template, we'll look at a multi-level IVR. So there's a few different template options here, but this one's a bit more complicated. It's 2 levels. It's press 1 for sales, 2 for support, and then further options beyond that. And these are all fully customizable, and that's part of that planning process that we'll go through with you to ensure that that design and planning process is as we need it to be. So we can go ahead and hit create. That'll fire a job off, and that's now doing about 4 hours of traditional work in a few minutes. So this is fully automated. You guys can all jump in here and be registering and going live with the service and making changes yourselves nice and easily. You'll get some other information in here around your organization addresses. So you can add your addresses to the platform to be able to associate those with each of your E911 compliance sites. Very simply, we add an address, fill a form in, it automatically takes a street address up here and populates all the relevant data down here. And then you can associate all of those with your telephone numbers. So a really nice, simple process for keeping those addresses updated, especially as many organizations have their staff working from lots of different remote locations and sites. If we have a look at our telephone numbers now, they're all in status okay. Which is really good. And what we can see is if we go back to Microsoft's environment now, we haven't had to touch any of the Microsoft space just yet. But if we go back to the Microsoft environment and we refresh the screen that we first started on, where we granted consent to that operator, you'll see in a quick refresh here that we now have 5 telephone numbers acquired. So it's that simple. The telephone numbers have been pushed directly into the tenancy. We've got 5 telephone numbers, all from the Seattle region in this instance, and those telephone numbers are now live. You can assign those telephone numbers through the G12 portal, and I'll just move that out of the way. Or you can obviously also do that through the user sync screen here. So we can synchronize our users, and these users will populate directly into the portal here, and we can assign those telephone numbers to people, which we'll do just now. And that's really it. It's as simple as that. It's a nice, easy, simple platform and process. I know we got a few extra minutes here, so what I'll show you is a couple of other things, and Rick spoke about the ability to connect this into your legacy PBX platforms and systems. So one of the really important pathways is making sure that you've got the old and the new, and have that seamless and easy transition or migration between the two platforms. So what we do there, and we'll talk about this in a little bit more in a moment, but what we do is we'll set up a SIP trunk to your existing Mitel, ShoreTel, NEC, Cisco, etc. And to do that, you very simply add a new service, and you bring this thing called SIP or SBC as a service into the G12 platform. We add that service. It's as simple as that. It's that quick to be able to provision and make that service live. And then the first thing we want to be able to do is have a look at all of our trunks. Now, a trunk is a group of SIP channels. It's what calls route across. Think of it like a highway for SIP. It's how all our calls go in and out of different PBXs and platforms. And you get unlimited channels to Microsoft, which is pretty cool. That's why it says 0 here. But what we'll do is we'll go and build out a new SIP trunk. So this SIP trunk we're going to take from the US, and we're going to go and build maybe 5 or 10 channels or 1,000 channels, whatever that might be, with multiple levels of redundancy now directly and live back into your environments. You can pick this from other regions. For the sake of today's demo, I'm going to pick Australia because I got to have a plug to Australia somewhere in this demo. And we'll go ahead and press create. So what that does is it automatically provisions, in this case, Melbourne and Sydney nodes across the environment, and it's building all of that SIP trunk configuration. And what this means is that you can have your traditional PBX connected to this platform, plus Teams connected to this platform. And now you get to choose on a per telephone number basis where you want those calls to go. So we can see here, all of these calls are going to Operator Connect. If we want this telephone 0040 to now route to the SIP trunk or to the legacy PBX, we click one button and hit Save Changes, and that's it. 0040 will now update and route through to that SIP trunk. So you can see here, we can have most of our users on the legacy PBX day one, and then on a per user basis, one by one, you can migrate those users across. So here are those users that have been pulled down from the Microsoft tenancy. I've got Adele, Vance, Alex, Alan, etc. It tells us their telephone number, their licensing status, whether they can have a phone number or not. So let's grab Adele here, and we'll edit Adele, and we're going to put Adele onto 0044. That's a cool number. And we'll hit save. And that's now live and activated and made Adele ready to go with that telephone number. They got 1 minute left. So let's see if we can smash this in and have a login to Adele's account and make it go completely live. So here I've got all of my user accounts in the Microsoft tenancy. I'm going to copy this password real quick, Adele's account. We're going to sign out of this, and we're going to log into Teams. And I'm not going to take any thunder away from Brandon, because he's going to show you a lot of this sort of stuff when we go live and how to make phone calls. But I just want to show you here that we can actually log into Adele, and she'll be able to click on her phone icon and go live. And for a lot of the demos and things that we do, we like proving to people that this really works. So I'll throw into the chat window in just a moment this telephone number, and you guys can dial in and leave a voicemail from your cell phones, and we'll prove that it works. So here we go. This is Adele's Teams account, and we've got all of her normal sort of Teams information and icons. We can go across to the calls tab, and as you guys are dialing in, you can see she's already got a telephone number that's been provisioned. Yeah, if someone's dialing in right now, it'll be making calls, and we'd see a real live call coming in here. But that's the power of Teams calling. It's the power of Teams calling on Operator Connect with G12 specifically. I'll zoom right in there so you guys can see that. It's the power of automation and true scale and power of the cloud. Thank you. Thanks everyone, and I'll hand back over to Rick to continue on.
Perfect. Hey, thank you very much, Dan. That was awesome. I think that was under the 10 minutes that we promised that this would work in. So that's an awesome tour. It's such a powerful thing to be able to deliver SIP trunking in concurrence with with your team's migration strategy. So having the ability to consolidate all your telco, maybe from different sites or from a single site or into a PBX, and then be able to move numbers over, departments over as you migrate off of that system. Some people are concerned about migrating, particularly if you're a healthcare center or a larger organization that's got a lot of disparate pieces, right? Removing that core system sometimes poses a bit of a challenge. And so ideally, you can have the SIP trunking. We take all that dial tone, we consolidate it, and now when we've got full control in here to move that over to Teams, we can migrate those users over and then migrate that core routing infrastructure over. It makes for a really seamless transition. Okay, so next up is Brandon. Brandon, for those of you who haven't seen what Teams looks like inside of and again, there's a lot of leadership on the call, and if you haven't seen what Teams looks like from an admin perspective, Brandon's going to give you some of the highlights on a lot of the features that we see people interested in when they come to work with us. And so, Brandon, if you wouldn't mind, just take it away and show us what Teams system looks like.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen out, and I'm going to be all over the place as I give this demo, but there's a couple things that I want to latch on to what Dan had already showed as far as our TCAP system and a few things around as you plan for onboarding or migrating into Operator Connect via our TCAP system. If you do leverage this builder for the IVR, call queuing, whatnot, the one call out here is when you're creating this account up here and then you're pushing that up to Microsoft, it's actually going to go create the resource accounts in Microsoft, and then it's going to bring them and sync them into the TCAP system. The one piece I want to highlight is as you plan this, these resource accounts, if they're expected to receive an external phone call, they also need to be licensed. They will not get licensed by TCAP. We don't control your licensing. So just know that you'll need to go apply a Teams phone resource account license to whatever resource account, again, that's receiving that external phone call. If that doesn't happen, obviously that account will never activate for number assignment that Dan had already demonstrated. So that was just a quick call out there. So back into the Teams Admin Center, we could spend hours going through this. I'm gonna try to just touch on maybe 4 of the main features we get asked about, and then kind of show you the demonstration from the user experience perspective, what that looks like. The really neat thing about Teams as your phone system, if you're already a Microsoft consumer for Office 365, Azure Active Directory, and the whole suite of Microsoft services, really the power of bringing the phone system into Teams is you now don't have these disparate systems where I'm sure some of you can relate to, user onboards or user leaves the company, and now you've got to swivel chair and remove a user from Microsoft, remove a user from your Avaya system, and you got to keep track of all these moving parts, or you've got to automate the whole process through an OSS or a back-end system. The nice thing about Microsoft is it's kind of becomes your one-stop shop for all user management. So as you create your users and you onboard them in your Teams Admin Center, they are present for you to manage from a phone perspective, a team chat perspective, your ability to apply policies that allow them to host webinars, meetings, etc. So there's a couple users we're going to focus in on, one of which is this OC user. I have that logged in on the actual Teams client. Again, I know Garcia was mentioning we're on a Zoom. The reason for that is that when I make a phone call, if we're on a Microsoft webinar, I'd get kicked out of the webinar. So I want to be able to show you what Teams client is doing when I pop that phone call into the client. So user management it's pretty straightforward. You can apply emergency policies, addresses to the users. You can assign voicemail policies. You can also put some of this in the user control. The user can set up their own voicemail policies if that's something the company wants to allow. And you can get a quick view of all policies assigned to the user if you're trying to figure out where you need to steer this customer from a policy and compliance perspective. As we move down the menu, as Rick had mentioned earlier, we can integrate phones, ATAs, meeting rooms, all kinds of stuff into Teams natively. I have in this demo account, we've attached 3 Teams enabled phones. They're currently offline, but if they're online, then we could set up simul rings to ring the phone to the user along with their Teams client. You can do all kinds of stuff with the devices here. You can update the device remotely. You can do MACDs with the device, auto provision, add custom configuration profiles. Maybe you're changing a program of a button, or you want the phone to behave in a certain way. That can all be done right here within the Teams Admin Center. SIP devices, I don't have anything connected here, but let's say you have a PRI, maybe it's going to a legacy fax machine of some sort that still requires some kind of RJ connection. You could connect your ATA here and then connect that dial logic, that dial plan back into your analog system, the fax machine, whatever it is. So let's keep moving down. A lot of stuff here. I'm going to skip over the meetings and messaging policies because that's not our focus. We're going to kind of dive right into the voice. And as Dan had already demonstrated, this is a different demo tenant. We've already granted consent to G12 Communications. We've acquired 7 numbers. We've taken those numbers and we've assigned them out to various users and voice applications being auto attendants, call queues, things of that nature. There, as Dan said, you can definitely manage the user assignment here. From a G12 perspective, we find with our existing customers, it causes a bit of confusion. So we tend to steer people and our clients into kind of separating the PSTN piece from Teams admin, where we encourage you to do your user to phone number assignment out in our TCAP system, just to ensure that we have a true sync between what's going on in Teams and what's going on in the PSTN side of the world on our side of the network. Again, as Dan said, if you don't, every so often we'll go out and sync check and we'll correct that, but we have seen it cause confusion and it causes questions. Then as we move down into call policies, as we get into policies, whether it's call policies, call hold, call park, etc., this is where you have the ability to create very custom call policies or dial policies, and then attach them to users based on your company requirements. That could be compliance, it could be quality assurance, it could be any number of things. The one that I've created for this demo is called Call Recording with Screen Pop, where I've enabled call recording for the callers that get assigned to this policy. And then I've also enabled transcription that allows for real-time transcription as that phone call is in progress. And then of course, it records all of that and stores it for later review. And then lots of features in here. The other one that I'm going to demonstrate is the screen pop, where we get asked by clients all the time if we can support any kind of screen pop for their CRM, whether that's Salesforce, HubSpot, Zendesk, whatever. I'm going to demonstrate a screen pop into a Zendesk environment just to show that for calls coming in, I can take and set up a custom URL where I can pass in that tag In this case, I'm going to pass in the phone number it's calling, and we'll screen pop and pull records associated to that phone number. Call hold policies. This is where you're going to set custom defined call hold music based on your company needs, you know, whether it's for specific users, departments, or just globally for your entire company. This one just has the default Teams hold music. Caller ID policies. This is where you can control rules around how caller ID is presented back out as you're making outbound calls to your clients. This can be done here. The other place that I'll touch on is back in our TCAP system. You can also control it from out in the PSTN side of Operator Connect. The number I'm going to pick on is this 4742 number, where I'm actually going to present it as a different number to the outbound call. So I'm presenting it from a 406 number, which happens to be the auto attendant number. So maybe what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to elicit a call back, and I want them to come back into, maybe it's a toll-free number or whatever the IVR number is, but I want them to come back into the main line of the company versus calling me back directly. Again, you can do that within the TCAP system, or you can do it back in the Teams admin center, depending on how granular you want to be with your caller ID policies. Another one that I'm going to demonstrate is the emergency calling policies and how you tie that to the user, how you set up network locations based on, could be switches, SSIDs for Wi-Fi, wireless networks, or trusted IPs, etc. And then tying it to how we send notifications depending on your compliance needs for 911. I'll just touch on two things really quick here, and then I'll demonstrate it later. Is based on your needs, maybe you've got a compliance or a security or a safety officer that you also want to bridge into the call. One thing Microsoft supports is if I, as a user, dial 911, Microsoft has the ability to conference in that safety or compliance officer if that's part of your corporate requirements. The last thing it can do is it can actually notify external resources as well. So maybe it's a cell phone or a third-party PSTN number that you want to also notify of that emergency call. Today, I'm just going to demonstrate a notification only, where I've set up a notification group where it's going to alert somebody within the organization that an emergency call has been placed. Again, voicemail policies. This, has to do with, do you want to transcribe the voicemail? Do you want to mask profanity? I would say if your customers are calling in and they're swearing at you, I'd ask why your customers are calling in swearing at you, but you can definitely mask that out and keep that. And I haven't tested this, so it'd be interesting to see if it gives the dots or if it just completely wipes the word out. I'm guessing it puts the little asterisks in. And Dan, I don't know if you've tested this or not.
I have tested it, and it does just it masks it. It doesn't get rid of it altogether. We wanted to test it. That's what I was laughing.
puts the stars in. Yeah, that's what I figured. And then the other piece that from a corporate compliance perspective, that's probably going to be of interest if you've got CISOs that care about how and where data is being sent. You might want to turn off the sharing the improvement to Microsoft, so that they can use your analytics to improve their service. Again, that's going to be based on your company requirements there. So again, lots of stuff we can get into, but I know we're running really short on time, and I really want to show you some of this stuff. So again, auto attendance, call queues, these can be set up to be as robust and powerful as the traditional call queues and auto attendance you're used to seeing, whether that's Avaya, Cisco, Mitel. Microsoft has the ability to support, that level of complexity. Some of the high level stuff is how and where you deliver that call based on business hours. You can set up, your own audio greetings. You can have Microsoft use their voice, their text to voice to do it. You can change between the different voice temperatures is, I guess, what I call them, between male and female, and then make decisions based on what to do with that call, during hours, after hours, as well as during holidays. I have only added Christmas for the upcoming holiday, but again, can make a decision based on if it's during the holidays that I've defined, the 25th and the 26th, then it's going to make a different decision than what it's doing up here in the normal business hour call flow. And then again, tying that back to that resource account that was created, again, ensuring that that resource account also is licensed to receive that call. This is a very basic, I don't have a call queue in here, but when it comes to making call routing decisions, like as an example down here, pressing 1 for sales, I have this going to a direct user. Most companies we see would send that to a call queue that then can do hunt groups and distribute that call out to a set of users, a group voicemail, whatever your requirements are. And then the last piece that I'm going to touch on is the locations. This is the emergency address and network topology stuff. Essentially, if you're needing to provide that 911 Ray bomb compliance to your users in your locations, this is where you would set up and you'd map out your network locations. Again, could be based on subnet access points, switches, the actual ports on the switches. Again, you'll have to sit down and do the planning on how you want to do that. For our demonstration, I'm tying a subnet to the G12 corporate office, and then I'm tying that subnet to an emergency location, which is the actual emergency address. From there, I'm creating a topology that ties those network locations into whatever my corporate topology needs to look like. So I've established G12 headquarters. I've tied that subnet that I created down in network location to the topology. And then the last piece that I've done is I need to be able to trigger this location based on some trigger. And in this case, I'm going to trigger on a public external subnet. This could be your corporate VPN. This could be your corporate egress point to the internet. However, your client is going to present to Microsoft. That's the external untrusted IP that you would put. When I say untrusted, I mean publicly routable IP in the trusted IP here to trigger on. And when the Microsoft client registers and if it matches that IP to Microsoft, it will tie my user to the topology that I've defined. Again, this network location is the address that gets defined in emergency addresses. And you can see that I've got an address that's tied to a user. An important call out here is if you expect the call to route properly from G12 into the PSAP, the address must be validated in order for that call to route to the correct PSAP. So if I'm calling from this address, I would expect it to route into, I don't know if that's King County in Washington or not, but I would expect it to route into whatever that county PSAP is or the city PSAP for Kirkland, Washington. If it's not validated, it's not going to route correctly. It's going to go to a national call center, and then we'll have to be manually routed from there. So with that said, there was a lot there. I went over it very quickly. I'm going to do a quick demonstration of emergency calling and how it notifies, and then a quick call park, call recording, and transcription, and then we'll open it up for Q&A, I believe. So with that, I'm going to start with, I've got a lot of stuff open here. So I'm going to start with a user, and I'm going to call into this 966 number, and I'm going to park that call just to show that, back to what Garcia said earlier, there's a misconception that the team's phone system is not a fully featured phone system when in reality it is. So we should be getting a phone call here in a second. Probably help if I dialed the right number. Yeah. So there's our call. I'm going to accept it. So let's say this user's wants to get this caller to someone else that can help. There's a few different ways they can do that, right? They can transfer with the client. You can actually do a warm transfer, or one of the newer features is you can actually park the call. This call park is a policy that can be defined on a per user basis, so you don't have to necessarily enable call park for everyone. But I'm going to go ahead and park that call. It's going to disconnect this user from the call. It's going to give him a call park code. I know that's kind of small, probably hard to see, but the code is 107. So now this user just needs to notify whoever they're going to tell that, hey, I've parked a call, your code is 107. You can now pick that call up. So I'm going to come over to the client. This user is also enabled for parking calls. I'm going to click this button down here called parked calls, and it's going to prompt me for the code. I'm going to dial 107, and I'm going to pick that call up. And it's going to pop that call open. And now we've got the call established with this OC user 1. From there, some of the newer features from Microsoft that are pretty cool are this turn live caption on, transcription, and call recording for audio recording. Live captions, one of the use cases I could see this being used for is for the hearing impaired. So if we turn this on, you can have it prompt for language each time, or you can save it so it doesn't prompt you again. I'm going to just confirm that as English. I'm going to mute the one side, and you're going to see here in a second, now we've got call caption going, so that now if I'm hearing impaired, I've got a visual representation of what's going on the call. And it does it for both parties. So I'll mute this side, unmute this side, and try not to hang this call up. Got to unmute my other headset. Nothing like technology using 6 headsets to do this, but here now you've got the side doing this.
That's awesome. Brandon, we should probably cut the emergency calling thing and all that stuff short so we can get some Q&A in here. I'm sure some folks want to have some questions. And is there a final sort of wrap up point here, Brandon?
Yeah, just 2 others. I'm turning on recording with transcription so that you can see that in motion. And then I'll do a quick screen pop, and yeah, we can skip out on the 911. So I've still got the closed captioning going, but now I've got transcription going on, where that's going to be saved as a record for later review, whether that's again for compliance or for QA, quality assurance. That's also doing I'm doing an audio record. So when I stop the recording and I hang this call up, and you don't have to stop the recording, you can just hang the call up, it will tie those records to the phone call, where you can access the call recording and the transcript at a later date. That gets saved out into a SharePoint location. Real quick, for 911, you'll see the address is tied to the user. I'll skip that demo. The last one is I'll do a quick screen pop so you can see the screen pop in motion, and then we can go to Q&A real quick. So I'm going to call into this 720 number. When the call arrives, it should pop the screen to, I have it popping to Zendesk. Let me find the number here. Yeah, there's the call. I'm going to answer. It's done a screen pop. Notice it's got the phone number in the URL. It's going to, based on Zendesk, it's going to move that into a search function, and it's going to pull a record associated with that phone number. Obviously, the possibilities become endless here for what you can do with that screen pop inside of whatever CRM that you're using. So there's the quick and dirty demo.
Very good.
Garcia,
very good.
you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Brandon. That was awesome to go through. Some of those are just really cool features that Microsoft has introduced, and we're excited to take them out to our to our customers. Okay, so I know we had a few more slides. If you just go through them real quick for just a second, we're not gonna talk about these anymore, but we'll include this in part of the deck that we're going to send out. So if you wanna move to the next slide there. So that we'll talk about the migration. You can see what that looks like from a topographical perspective. The next slide, please. This is important for those of you, those organizations that have BPOs or contact centers. We can bring that dial tone into the platform so that we can deliver those services via SIP into those other platforms. This is what the analog connections look like if you're connecting analog devices to that. We've got some pricing in here for both for basic service, which is just enabling users. Typically, if you've got thousands of users, it's on a usage basis. Then there's the all-inclusive 650. And then if you want us to build and manage your team's infrastructure or voice phone system, we add another per user fee onto that. And then finally, this last slide here, I like to call this sort of my Zen slide, because I look at this and I think about, well, if you could imagine a communications platform that integrates with all of the business applications, that's built across a network inclusive of all your sites, all your users, all your devices. And imagine that advanced feature set that you're able to use now is developed in real time and after understanding users and how they interact with their customers versus features that were built before voicemail was built, right? And if you imagine this consolidated tech stack that's easily supported by your IT team, and that the user experience is simple, allowing them to do their core job effectively. And then if you can imagine that platform probably costs less, significantly less than what you're paying today when you consider the phone service, the maintenance and licensing and third-party infrastructure or infrastructure costs needed to support that simple solution now is consolidated, it's less expensive, and it's your new reality essentially. So it's a really cool thing when you migrate your phone system into Microsoft Teams and your organization is using Teams as a communication platform. Q&A. Are there any questions that we want to answer live? I know that we had a couple of questions in the chat box. Anybody have a question there? Interesting. The Teams premium is coming. I think some of the features that we're seeing today may be part of the Teams premium. I don't know if it's going to be all inclusive of the E5 licensing or if it's going to be an add-on there, but I do know that we are keeping an eye on the Teams premium features. And again, there's a lot that Teams has been deploying. So rightfully so, if there's some additional, some additional features, like I think the webinar was one of them, right? Big webinars up to 20,000 people that may someday move into the, Teams premium licensing, but for now it's all included. Any other questions for the group?
There was one other question there, Rick. Is it possible to link multiple 365 tenant phone systems to interact with one another? So phone trees, different buildings, call routes, that sort of stuff. Yeah, essentially it is. So you can do that between those tenancies. You can have actually multiple tenancies being managed in the one platform. So you can be set up to link multiple tenancies together. Depending on what you're trying to do, if you've got two separate Microsoft phone systems, maybe Department A has their own 365 tenancy and then Department B has a different one, we can consolidate that and give you the sort of a single pane management experience. And then being able to transfer the calls between those tenancies, they can be done via that SBC as a service channel, so that you can have on-net routing effectively between those two organizations, not having to go out to the PSTN and back in again. You can just route directly to those different tenants.
Excellent. Thanks, Dan. All right. Well, everyone, thank you very much for your time. I know we've been over 4 or 5 minutes here. We appreciate you spending this hour with us, and we hope you were able to get a lot out of how to make Microsoft Teams your all-in-one business calling platform. So for those of you interested, you can certainly reach out to us. Everyone's going to get a copy of the recording. And certainly if you go over to uc.g12com.com, you can register for your free trial of Microsoft Teams calling. Very good. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.